Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, how are you?
Good. I might have to cut off a little early if my son needs a ride home from school.
Oh, okay. You're picking somebody up from school?
Well, no, I don't usually. He usually takes the bus and then walks up from the bus stop, but he's still at school for some reason, so he might have missed the bus. And my
Okay.
wife has calls she has to do. So anyway, we'll see.
See the one that's on the tennis?
Yeah,
Maybe he's doing some tennis stuff.
season's over.
Oh, it is.
Who knows? Maybe he was meeting with a teacher, or they called off school tomorrow because of flooding, but the river's
Flooding.
not going to affect. Yeah, the local river, it's Skagit River, is way over flooded, but it
Wow.
doesn't really affect us. So I'm not sure why every student has to miss school tomorrow. But anyway, that's what they do.
They had a lot of rain on the West Coast for some reason.
Oh yeah, there's an atmospheric river hitting us right now. Tons and tons of rain.
Huh. Why couldn't it happen like 6 months ago? California would have liked that. Let's see, our Mike is admitting here. You got to admit, Mike. Thanks for at least partially, coming. I don't know if you're.
Yeah.
You might have to come. You might have to split right in the middle of this, right?
Yeah.
That's all right. It'll be online. I always record everything, so if you want to catch the rest of it. Let me see if this time I think, what happened last time.
Mike.
Hey, Mike, are you there?
Yep.
All right, Bo. Last time I think what happened is I opened up the Zoom box early. And so it forgot what I had on my sharing screen. So let me see if I can. Okay, here it is, chapter 2. See, that's what happens. You can't like open up Zoom and then expect it to remember all the stuff that you've had on there. I guess it disappears after a while. Okay, we're on verse 24. I've just been reading today like a madman. That's what I do. I just read. But I'm on the really nectar chapter, Ramananda Roy's discussion with Lord Chaitanya.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God, it's so nice.
Go deeper.
When I first read it, what's that?
Go deeper. Go deeper.
Oh yeah. I mean, that's what I'm learning about this particular chapter. I'm getting some realizations is you have to just follow in the footsteps of these great souls, and they're all getting all this information from Lord Chaitanya, and all you have to do is kind of like focus all your energy and all your, one-pointed determination to actually consume the message, and it's all directed toward Krishna, toward his lotus feet, And
That's
so
how
when you
it's
have
true.
that one-pointed determination, it's very easy because Lord Chaitanya makes it very easy to fall in love with Krishna.
I noticed that there's a verse in the Nectar of Instruction, Syat Krishna Nama Charitadi Sitapta Vidya Pitopatapta Rasanachana Rochikanu. The holy name, character, and pastimes of Krishna are all sweet like sugar candy. But the tongue of one afflicted with the disease of avidya, jaundice, is like can't taste anything sweet. But it's wonderful that by carefully chanting these sweet names every day, so it has to be done carefully.
Yeah. And not only that, it says Atichiram, for a long time. And so I'm halfway through this chapter right now. I don't even know if I'm about halfway through it, but I've already read 3 hours and 45 minutes of it. So it's probably 7 and 8 hour chapter with the Sanskrit and the synonyms and everything. But it's really, really nectar because, Ramananda Roy, they're both so humble. Lord Chaitanya says, you got to enlighten me. He was asking Ramananda Roy. He said, I'm just a shooter. I don't know anything. And Lord Chaitanya was saying, I'm a Mayavadi. What do I know? I'm just, and, Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya told me to hook up with you because you know all this stuff.
Wow.
So, but they're both really, really humble. It's like amazing. So, Mike, you want to start us out with that
My
text
son just
24?
arrived. I don't have to give him a ride after all.
Sure. Okay.
Hey,
Text 24.
Text 24, yeah.
Synonyms: Achedya, unbreakable. Yam, this soul. Daya, unable to be burned. Yam, this soul. Akledya, insoluble. Ashosya, not able to be dried. Eva, certainly. Cha, and. Nitya, everlasting. Sarvagata, all-pervading. Stanu, unchangeable. Achala, immovable. Ayam, this soul. Sanatana, eternally the same. Translation. This individual soul is unbreakable and insoluble, and can neither be burned nor dried. He is everlasting, present everywhere, unchangeable, immovable, and eternally the same.
You want to read the purport, Maitreya?
All these qualifications of the atomic soul definitely prove that the individual soul is eternally the atomic particle of the spirit whole, and he remains the same atom eternally without change. The theory of monism is very difficult to apply in this case, because the individual soul is never expected to become one homogeneously. After liberation from material contamination, the atomic soul may prefer to remain as a spiritual spark in the effulgent rays of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but the intelligent souls enter into the spiritual planets to associate with the personality of Godhead.
I guess I'll read the second one. The word sarvagata, quote, all pervading, end quote, is significant because there's no doubt that living entities are all over God's creation. They live on the land and the water and the air, within the earth, and even within fire. The belief that they're sterilized in fire is not acceptable, because it's clearly stated here that soul cannot be burned by fire. Therefore, there is no doubt that there are living entities also on the sun planet and with suitable bodies to live there. If the sun globe is uninhabited, then the word sarvagata, quote, living anywhere, everywhere, becomes meaningless. That reminds me of a BTG article that I saw. I used to be David Marita Swami's personal driver, you know. Mm-hmm. You know David Marita Swami, right, Maitreya?
Yeah, he was a Sankirtan leader when I was there.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I used to drive him all over the place, you know, in his Ford Taurus. But and he would have his gospel music blasting at full volume. But but he wrote an article for BTG about an experiment that they did at the bottom of the ocean in the Marianas Trench. Mm-hmm. Trench, yeah, they're in a trench, and there's a submarine called Alvin that can go really, really deep. And then they had those scientists down there, and they didn't expect, you know, they were right near volcanic activity. So the water was like really, really high pressure. And plus it was like 600 degrees. And so, you know, like paper will burst into flames at 700 degrees. But these guys, you know, they said, well, you didn't expect anything to happen, but they took a little sample of the water. And then when they looked at it, they saw there were little organisms in there, and then they all died. But then they took another sample, increased the pressure and the heat, and they all started thriving. So Dave Marita Swami said that, you know, the scientists would learn a lot from the Vedas, because they'd come up with all these new discoveries that they never knew before. They weren't expecting anything, but somehow or other, these living entities were able to thrive at the bottom of the ocean. So I'll read the Sanskrit in a translation. Text 25. Avyaktoyam achintoyam avikaryoyam uchate tasmadevam viditva vaivam nanosochitamarasi. Synonyms: avyakta, invisible, I am this soul; achintya, inconceivable, I am this soul; avikarya, unchangeable, I am this soul; uchate is said, tasmat, therefore, evam, like this; vidvitva, knowing it well, enam, this soul; do not, anusochitam, to lament, arasi, you deserve. Translation: it is said that this soul is invisible, inconceivable, and immutable. Knowing this, you should not grieve for the body. Go ahead, Mike, I guess.
Okay. Purport. As described previously, the magnitude of the soul is so small for our material calculation that he cannot be seen even by the most powerful microscope. Therefore, he is invisible. As far as the soul's existence is concerned, no one can establish his existence experimentally beyond the proof of Shruti or Vedic wisdom. We have to accept this truth because there is no other source of understanding the existence of the soul, although it is a fact by perception. There are many things we have to accept solely on grounds of superior authority. No one can deny the existence of his father based upon the authority of his mother. There is no source of understanding the identity of the father except by the authority of the mother. Similarly, there is no source of understanding the soul except by studying the Vedas. In other words, the soul is inconceivable by human experimental knowledge. The soul is conscious and is consciousness and conscious. That also is the statement of the Vedas, and we have to accept that. Unlike the bodily changes, there is no change in the soul. As eternally unchangeable, the soul remains atomic in comparison to the infinite supreme soul. The supreme soul is infinite and the atomic soul is infinitesimal. Therefore, the infinitesimal soul, being unchangeable, can never become equal to the infinite soul of the supreme personality of Godhead. This concept is repeated in the Vedas in different ways just to conform the stability of our conception of the soul. Repetition of something is necessary in order that we understand the matter thoroughly without error.
Maitreya, you want to read the
All right.
Sanskrit?
Tata chainam nitya jatam nityang va manyase mritam tatapitam mahabaho nainam sochitam arhasi. Ata, if, however, cha, also, enam, this soul, nitya jatam, always born, nityam, forever, va, either, manyase, if you so think, mritam, dead, tatap api, still, tum, you, mahabaho, O mighty armed one, na, never, enam, about the soul, shochitam, to lament, arhasi, deserve. Translation, if, however, you think that the soul or the symptoms of life will always be born and die forever, you still have no reason to lament, O mighty armed.
I'll read the first paragraph, and Mike, you can read the second one. There is always a class of philosophers most akin to the Buddhists who do not believe in the separate existence of the soul beyond the body. When Lord Krishna spoke the Bhagavad-gītā, it appears that such philosophers existed, and they were known as the Lokayatikas and the Vaibhashikas. Such philosophers maintain that life symptoms take place at a certain mature condition of material combination. The modern material scientists and the materialist philosophers also think similarly. According to them, the body is a combination of physical elements, and at a certain stage, the life symptoms develop by interaction of the physical and chemical elements. The science of anthropology is based on this philosophy. Currently, many pseudo-religions, now becoming fashionable in America, also adhering to this philosophy, as are the nihilistic non-devotional Buddhist sects. My father also, he's like a scientist. He was like a physicist in the 60s. He became an astronomer. He says, after you're dead, you're finished. It doesn't matter. You can take my ashes and throw them in the woods. That's what I want. I don't want any. He's actually an atheist. But Prabhupada was amazed to see even like people like learned scholars. They have no understanding of what the soul is, and they think that after the body's finished, everything's finished.
Disappointing. When I got when I was first in college at Pomona College, I had a class in anthropology, and the teacher, the very first day, he said, you may say the theory of evolution, but in this class, we're going to treat it as a fact. And that was that, no argument.
Yeah, well,
intellectually honest.
That's a religion. They don't have to have any, they don't have to have any proof. It's just like, it's like a conspiracy theorist, they don't have to have any kind of, they're the only ones that know. And so you can't argue with them, and
conspiracy theories have a lot more credence than just saying that we're going to accept a theory as fact. Because if a lot of people have a lot of money and therefore a lot of control, it's not exactly a stretch of the imagination to assume that they're going to conspire together to control things. That's pretty much a foregone conclusion. But the theory of evolution that, that one apartment turns into another apartment, as Prabhupada put it. Anyway, it's disappointing because college is a place you go for, more emancipated thought, but undergraduate is usually pretty much, no, you're going to do whatever is easiest for the professor.
That book, that magazine Origins, I think we talked about that last week. That's a really good starting point to use some pushback against this philosophy. I mean, if they have this, the materialistic reductionists is what they call them. They try to reduce everything to a simple formula. And actually Leon Lederman, who was the physicist from the Fermi National Laboratories, there's atom smasher down in Texas. They spent billions of dollars digging a big hole, and then they kind of canceled that, so much a waste of money. But he said he wanted a t-shirt because his brother was a t-shirt. He sold t-shirts and made t-shirts and sold them. He said he wanted to help his brother out. He wanted to have one formula that would explain everything, the existence of the life and everything on one simple formula, just like EMC squared, equals MC squared, just so he could put it on his philosophy.
One thing that they don't mention very much is that even complicated molecules that exist, not to say nothing of actual life forms, they're so complicated that if you analyze them statistically and analytically, they couldn't have arisen in the given age of the universe without help.
Well, there was actually a probability mathematician. His name was Eugene Wigner, and he calculated actually mathematically the chances of a self-replicating organism arising from random combinations of chemicals. You know what the number he came up with, the probability number that he came up with? What the percentage of that chance of happening is?
0.
0. And so, but nobody pays attention to that because that interferes with their philosophy that everything comes from nothing. See, that's the basis of enviousness and Mayavad philosophy too. They can't imagine the spirit soul. They can't imagine a spiritual existence where they think the opposite of matter. They don't like matter. The Mayavadis, they don't like matter. So they want to, and they understand that it causes suffering, just like the Buddhists, so they want to end all kinds of interactions with the material nature. So they figure that spiritual, because they don't have any idea of the spiritual world, they want to just negate the opposite. What is the opposite of material life? That's nothing, of activity, because they think it's all mundane. They just they believe it's some kind of void.
You have to have suffered a lot or be substantially envious, because I described this to my son and he just rolls his eyes. It's like, unless you've been contaminated, it's very difficult to accept those ideas.
Yeah, well, because they think of this void, that even the scientists, they can't understand how. So they have theories that actually the life comes from nothing, that the universe comes, all of a sudden they even have a theory that antimatter comes from like a quantum leap out of nothing.
Spiritual suicide.
The universe begins. And when I first came into Krishna consciousness, I was just like listening to the philosophy, and I just thought it made sense. But all these other theories that they have, these reverse universes and, like alternate universes and so many different wackadoodle theories, that it just doesn't make sense, but
here in this verse, Krishna is revealing that he's not attached. Even if you don't believe that there's a soul, still you don't have any reason to lament. That's one of the reasons I love
he doesn't really want to convince him, but he's just trying to get Arjuna to fight, for
man convinced against his will is of the same opinion still. He said the main point is you have a duty to do. Say whatever you want.
I mean, he was just using common sense on Arjuna at first, and he is using logic and argument in that, even if you believe that you are born and you die, still, you're going to die sooner or later anyway. So if the body is just a lump of chemicals and there's no more existence after that, what is there to lament? It's like Prabhupada was saying, like you don't stand on the shore of the ocean and all the waves come in and then all the bubbles burst after the waves receding. You don't sit there crying about the bubbles bursting.
So this brings up a question. It seems that the argument Krishna is making to Arjuna is that your main purpose, your main necessity is to do your duty, regardless of what you believe. I'm not interested. You have to do your duty anyway. And saying that you believe this or that, it's not an excuse for not doing your duty. So at the end of the day, it appears that what Krishna is most concerned with is that we do our duty, and that whatever we are, that will just come out in the wash and eventually. But main thing is we're just supposed to toe the line.
Well, that's the beginning of devotional service. We're all supposed to be following the Varnashram system, but actually the Varnashram system is external. What I'm learning.
That process can take hundreds and hundreds of lifetimes. So
yeah, but it only took, like, how long did it take Krishna to convince Arjuna?
Like 45 minutes.
Yeah, so there you go. I mean, he went step by step. First of all, he demolished all his arguments logically. And then he said, okay, first of all, you're not the body. You got to act on the basis of the spirit soul. And all these people that are menting for, they're not going to be harmed after they, even if they're dead. They go on living in a better condition than they were before. So why are you?
And he showed him the universal form after he was already convinced. So that wasn't part of the convincing process.
I think Arjuna actually asked him to do that just so that he could show other people that, hey, this is
exactly. But I mean, philosophically, he was already completely convinced at that point.
He was, at that point, he was convinced that that's the 10th chapter, right? The universal form
is the 11th chapter. So that comes a chapter afterwards. So
11th chapter, yeah. Yeah, but he didn't like that form. He'd rather see Krishna two-handed. I mean, who wouldn't? So much more beautiful. But where are we now?
Even if it's Mike's turn.
Mike.
Yep. Even if Arjuna did not believe in the existence of the soul, as in the Vaibhashika philosophy, there would still have been no cause for lamentation. No one laments the loss of a certain bulk of chemicals and stops discharging his prescribed duty. On the other hand, in modern science and in scientific warfare, so many tons of chemicals are wasted for achieving victory over the enemy. According to the Vaibhashika philosophy, the so-called soul or Atma vanishes along with the deterioration of the body. So in any case, whether Arjuna accepted the Vedic conclusion that there is an atomic soul, or he did not believe in the existence of the soul, he had no reason to lament. According to this theory, since there are so many living entities generating out of matter every moment, and so many of them are being vanquished every moment, there is no need to grieve for such incidents. If there were no rebirth of the soul, Arjuna had no reason to be afraid of being affected by sinful reactions due to his killing his grandfather and teacher. But at the same time, Krishna sarcastically addressed Arjuna as Mahabahu, mighty-armed, because he at least did not accept the theory of the Vaibhashikas, which leaves aside the Vedic wisdom. As a Kshatriya, Arjuna belonged to the Vedic culture, and it behooved him to continue to follow its principles.
I got a question for you guys. So, one may play the devil's advocate here and think that, so if you believe that the soul is vanquished, you're a scientist and you think, well, how could there be a soul that continues on after the body? And you have to be skeptical about the fact that the soul comes from heaven and it comes down in the rain, and the rain is eaten by a man, and that enters his sperm, and the sperm is entered into a woman, and that's how a human being is born. You might be a little skeptical about that, but the thing is, one thing that really makes me convinced about this is, even though a lot of things are set forth in religion, like Bhaktivinoda Thakur was saying that a lot of times these ideas of hell and these descriptions of hell are meant to scare people so that they won't commit sinful activities. And the idea of reincarnation is like you only have one shot, and so you better finish up your business in this lifetime. So that's why the early Christians got rid of the idea of incarnation. But Krishna and the Vedas and the great souls in our disciplic succession, like Shukadeva Goswami and Narada and Vyasa and Devala and all these people, why would they lie to you? And why would Krishna lie? I mean, there's no reason to lie. He said that, there's no doubt. You don't have to doubt about the fact that you're going to get another chance.
So what's your question?
It's just an observation, is that what convinces me is the authority of these people. Just like Krishna said to Arjuna, or Arjuna said to Krishna, Devala, Vyas, all these people are saying that you're the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So it's not just my opinion or your opinion, because someone might think, Arjuna is telling Krishna this by the way of flattery.
I think the being philosophically convinced comes after you've been convinced to associate with devotees. Most devotees that I know that have joined the temple or who have decided to start chanting, it wasn't because they were philosophically convinced and they had some Vedic way and it was overthrown. They just wanted to be like the devotees. They're miserable, and they see the devotees are happy by chanting and by associating with the holy name. And that's what they really want, is what Lord Chaitanya was giving, the bliss of chanting and eating prasadam and associating with devotees and being with people that aren't so miserable and have some totally different reason for living. And I mean, I know devotees that have gone for years, even in the movement, and have hardly read anything. They're not even philosophical, really. They're still devotees and they still do a lot of devotional service, but they couldn't even get their head around a purport like this, frankly. So
but it's like it reinforces it. And the thing is, Prabhupada said, if you don't read my books, you'll fall down sooner or later. And somebody might be attached to the Society of Devotees and get some taste in their hearing, and they're associating with devotees. I mean, it's kind of like, who you want to hang out with. George Harrison.
No, I agree with you. It's just when we start talking about people who are convinced or aren't convinced, and why would the great sages lie or whatever, those arguments are interesting for us to discuss, but there's nobody outside of a devotional circle that really cares. They don't know who Asita and Devala are. They're not convinced they're great people. Those arguments have no effect on them whatsoever. I just recently posted to my Facebook. I have another Facebook account for my family and stuff, so I can, and then I have another one for devotees. And I inadvertently posted something that from the third canto where Prabhupada is railing against atheists, and oops, I posted it on the wrong. And these are people I'm carefully cultivating. Boy, I got 4 or 5 posts. One person actually had to block because he got so offensive. So
you got to be careful. You like, I only use Facebook for I used to put like political posts and everything on there. I put every so once in a while I do something. I try to always dovetail it, but like I try to like usually focus on devotees, and most of my friends on Facebook are devotees, but at the same time, you still have to be careful. And but the thing is, you really do
have 2 accounts for that reason. I just have one for devotees, so it's just Krishna, nothing about the vaccine, nothing about anything else but Krishna and Prabhupada and the philosophy. And then I have
it under your army name or your devotee name?
And I have another one under Thomas Beek for Thomas Barton Beek for my, my family who want to see pictures and they want to stay in touch and whatever.
Yeah, sure. I mean, that's just it's like, what's his name? Raghunath Das Goswami, he had to go along with his wife and his father and wanted to keep him on the straight and narrow. But he just said, like pretty soon, Lord Chaitanya will extricate you from that situation,
That's a good example. Yeah.
So, but the thing is, we do really have to have an appreciation. We could remain on the Kanishta Adhikar platform with not really very much information about the scriptures, and not really have an appreciation for great souls, and understand that these are people that actually have some authority, But that means that we're always on the Kanishta platform, and we might be subjected to illusion because we don't believe anybody that like, who's this Prabhupada who's telling me this? I don't really agree with Prabhupada, in all things,
That's a good point. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita, there's a purport where Prabhupada says one devotee shouldn't shy away from discussing even difficult points of the philosophy because they strengthen the intelligence.
Right. And if you apply your logic and reason to Lord Chaitanya's philosophy, you'll find the results are wonderful, because he's just so, Lord Chaitanya has a way of just amalgamating all the different opposing principles of the philosophy. And so there's no more, it just vanishes into thin air. Any kind of contradiction or opposing philosophy, it just vanishes because it's not really important. If you understand based on, not so much on logic and reason, but if you apply your logic and reason to the thought through the mirror of Lord Chaitanya's vision, then it just becomes so easy. And that's another reason why we have to follow in the footsteps of the previous acharyas, because there's only so much we can learn from the scriptures. But if you follow in the footsteps, of the great souls, what is that verse? Parampara,
Yeah, argument and speculation doesn't get it. We have an eternal identity. It's real.
And following in the footsteps of the great souls, evam parampara praptam, is the doubtless and fearless way of actually understanding things, because this is a very personal process. You can't understand the Bhagavad-gītā unless you become a little bit submissive to an authority. So at least theoretically at first, you have to understand that maybe Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That's what Prabhupada says right at the very beginning.
Yeah.
At least theoretically accepted like that. And then you can go to the next step. But Krishna is step by step. He's telling Arjuna, first he's reasoning with him, and then he's going step by step and trying to convince him that he's not the body, and that you don't have any reason to lament all of his fears and his attachments. He's basically, tearing them apart bit by bit and making Arjuna surrender. And of course he did at the end, but he was totally bewildered at the beginning. But that's the beauty of the Bhagavad-gītā, is because every single person in the material world is like Arjuna. He's very much attached to his friends and family, and he wants to serve himself instead of serving Krishna. He's not interested in serving Krishna.
At the end of the purport, because he at least did not accept the theory of the Vaibhashikas.
Yeah, he's supposed to be a Vedic guy, he's the Vaibhashikas.
He said, meaning Krishna at least didn't accept that theory.
No, I mean, he was like being sarcastic. It was like giving him a little bit of nudge. And mighty armed, oh, mighty armed one, you believe that stuff? I mean, as a Kshatriya, he was supposed to believe in the Vedic principles, because they were steeped in that stuff. I mean, they would even, the culture, the Vedic culture, and the behavior of all those personalities back then, they wouldn't even tell a lie. Even Kamsa believed, what's his name, Vasudeva, when he said, okay, I'm going to give you all my children, you can do whatever you want with them. And he believed him. I mean, that's a pretty amazing thing. But of course, Vasudeva didn't believe Kamsa because he knew he was a demon. So who do you trust? Somebody, you have to trust somebody. If you trust your own mind, that's one thing.
I remember where I was when I had this next verse on the verse card and where I learned it.
Yeah, you read the next verse, because it's your turn to read the Sanskrit.
Chetasya hi dhruvo mrityor dhruvam janmam ritasya cha tasmad apariharyarte natvam sochitamarhasi jatasya, of one who has taken his birth, he certainly, dhruvaha, a fact, mrityu, death, dhruvam, it is also a fact, janma, birth, mritasya, of the dead, cha, also, tasmat, therefore, apariharye, of that which is unavoidable, arte, in the matter, na, do not, tvam, you, shochitam, to lament, arhasi, deserve, translation. One who has taken his birth is sure to die, and after death, one is sure to take birth again. Therefore, in the unavoidable discharge of your duty, you should not lament.
Mike, you want to read the purport?
Sure. Purport. One has to take birth according to one's activities of life. And after finishing one term of activities, one has to die to take birth for the next. In this way, one is going through one cycle of birth and death after another without liberation. This cycle of birth and death does not, however, support unnecessary murder, slaughter, and war. But at the same time, violence and war are inevitable factors in human society for keeping law and order. The battle of Kurukshetra, being the will of the Supreme, was an inevitable event, and the fight for the right cause is the duty of a Kshatriya. Why should he be afraid of or aggrieved at the death of his relatives, since he was discharging his proper duty? He did not deserve to break the law, thereby becoming subjected to the reactions of sinful acts, of which he was so afraid. By avoiding the discharge of his proper duty, he would not be able to stop the death of his relatives, and he would be degraded due to his selection of the wrong path of action.
That purport reminds me of another reason why you should agree that, you're not born, there's another life after this one, is because, whatever you do at the time of death, whatever you're thinking about, you think of the demigods, you go to demigods, think of the forefathers, go to the forefathers, think of ghosts and spirits, you go to those beings. If you think of Krishna, you go to Krishna. It's a natural progression. Whatever you think of at the time of death, that state you attain without fail. So, you have to die, and then you take birth again. It's a natural consequence of your actions in this life, and also your karma in the last life. So it just makes sense to me. It's not some kind of unbelievable conspiracy theory, like something that somebody just made up. It's just a natural sequence to me. I mean, besides the fact that all these great souls have said that there is another world after this one, why would Lord Chaitanya lie to me? He wants the best for everyone. He wants everybody to be happy. Why would he pull the wool over our eyes and say something that's not true? That's just inconceivable to me, because he's
Some
so.
souls know they've come here to enjoy, and they really don't like any philosophy that hampers their full-on material enjoyment. So until they become disgusted with that process, there's very little that's going to sink in.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's why you have to like feed him prasadam and have him, get him a taste, just like Lord Chaitanya, Lord Krishna said, okay, surrender to me. And nobody understood that. But Lord Chaitanya, Bhakti Vigyan Goswami, he described this, like sometimes, he said in the country where he's from, a company would put out a product, and he'd put out 3 samples. And he'd say, you try this and you'll like it, and the holy name is like that, you try it and then, yeah, we like it, but in order to actually go further, then you have to actually become a little bit strict. And so you get the sample and then you want some more, but then you have to pay for it. So it's just a matter of, but Lord Chaitanya is the most magnanimous, because I was just reading his Liberation of Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. He was so kind to him. He sat there for 7 days and listened to Mayavad philosophy, and just in order to bring him to the next position. And he was so merciful to him, even though he was a complete Mayavadi and his heart was like iron because he was such a logician. But he completely melted his heart. And Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya said, you've delivered the whole world. That's not a big deal, but you've actually delivered me. That is a big deal. And each one of us is in that state. How much stuff have we been stuck in our whole lives that somehow or other Krishna has dislodged us bits by bit and then melted our hearts to
It's
the
a
point
miracle.
where we can actually understand things.
That's the one thing. It's both logic and mercy, because by chanting the holy names, getting a taste even for the holy names, that's not something that we do. That's not up to us. That's Krishna.
No.
He's revealing himself. And when he's pleased with us by our sincere chanting. And some people chant and they don't ever get a taste. Why is that? So it's because we're trying to please Krishna. And if we're successful, then Krishna begins revealing himself by our surrender. As they surrender unto me, I reward them accordingly.
Yeah, that was the case with Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. His brother or brother-in-law, his relative there, he was saying, you can't understand anything because Krishna is not, even the most intelligent man on the planet. Yeah. They can't understand anything about Krishna unless they have a little bit of mercy, and then they can understand. Otherwise, it's not possible. It's amazing. It's kind of like a velvet rope, when you get into a club. I think I made that analogy before. It's like a secret club that you can't even get in unless you're actually in with the in crowd. Krishna has to have a little bit of mercy, and then you get inside.
Absolutely.
So anyway, it is that time again. Thank you so much for your participation as always, and look forward to seeing you this Wednesday if possible. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Hare Krishna. Thank you.